Oh, wait a second.
We're live.
Stream is live. Oh, I just have expected, a great intro and something like this, like the last time and so on. But we are live. So, hello everyone. So, welcome to this great episode of a new Copilot show with the M365 crew. My name is Bülent Oldensoy. I'm delighted to have Isabel and Marcel as co-hosts here in that case. So, welcome everyone.
Yes. Well, are we getting
Welcome.
started, or are we going to have an intro song, or this is it?
That's it. We're here live today.
Okay.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
So, in that case, so we have a super cool topic today. So, our topic will be about how we build Copilot agents. And I'm very, very happy and delighted to have one of the best here for this case with Griffin. So, Griffin, welcome. If you're following my Copilot Studio newsletter, Griffin is a regular guest there. And I can tell you he's one who's creating awesome quality videos and explaining you in a very easy way how you can build that kind of agents in Copilot Studio. And that's why we're super happy to have you here today. And especially for me, because I was 2 times on your show. Now I can finally say I invited you to this show as well. So welcome, Griffin. How are you doing, man?
Man, I'm great. Thank you guys for having me here. Hopefully I sound all right, but let me know if I don't. But yeah, super excited to be here. Like Bülent said, I'm Griffin Lickfeld. Super excited to be here, and I'm a Microsoft MVP, and spend a lot of my time in Copilot Studio and playing around and trying to learn everything I can with building agents, and ultimately, yeah, sharing most of everything I'm learning on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So definitely we'll plug that as well, citizen developer. But yeah, that's me. I on the delivery side of things, building apps, agents, and automations for businesses, and excited for the conversation to talk about agents today.
Very awesome. So before we deep dive, and we have a lot of questions, you can be already very, you are prepared. I know you are, I think, one of the most prepared people ever. When I was on your show, you sent me that kind of a catalog of questions, and like wow, wow. I'm just, wow. And what I can tell you is, wow, obviously, right? So, but you've become an MVP a couple months ago. So before we start right away, what did change in your life? Is it normal as before, or is there little things where you say, wow, what happened here?
Yeah. So yeah, I had been like kind of creating content, sharing what I was learning on LinkedIn and YouTube for about 2 years before I was able to sit at the Cool Kids Club, the Cool Kids table, but and got the MVP award. But it doesn't change a whole lot from like a content perspective or like a passion perspective on those sort of things. I have noticed that I do feel like you get more people reaching out to you to either answer their questions or speak at something or do this or do that. So that has been cool, and kind of, I guess, you get added to your LinkedIn profile. So that's nice, I guess, kind of one of those grown-up trophies, I guess. And so that... Nothing too crazy, no. At this point, I still think I'm pretty new. I actually just last week got my email confirmation that I'm registered for MVP Summit, so I'm really excited for that coming up here in about a month. At this point, to be able to go up to Redmond, Washington, and meet a lot of the other people in the Cool Kids Club, like I said. So.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So that was a nice part. Now we're getting to the real questions, and one first topic is obviously agents, how people get agents wrong. I mean, we hear agent all over the time, and when you're just sitting together with clients, it's all about agent buildings. And Isabel, what do you think that people try to build agents? What's getting wrong? What would you like to ask Griffin in that case?
I would say let's start with the fundamentals, right? Let's just get the basics. When people say Copilot agents everywhere, AI this, AI that, what are we actually talking about, Because I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of confusion in the market. What could you let us know? What are we actually talking about?
Yeah, so it's so funny. I definitely agree with kind of the AI hype and the buzzword and the gold rush around that. And maybe I haven't played my part in that. I'm creating a lot of content around AI as well. So, but nonetheless, there is a lot of stuff out there, a lot of hype around this new technology. And I was honored to be able to lead a session at M365 Con last month, and kind of I started off my presentation with just saying, like, guys, agents have existed for decades. And what I meant by that is they've really just existed in the form of automation. And if we can like demystify and boil down what an agent is, I think it's easy if we look at something like Power Automate, right? So all Power Automate is at its core is it gets inputs in, it processes some level of code and actions and triggers and conditional branching and all of those pieces, and there's some level of output. You know, it's a record gets created, a record gets updated, an email comes in, someone gets notified, someone submits a form, a lead gets created, whatever that may be. Like at the end of the day, automations are just inputs in, they're processing it, they're doing some level of actions, and there's some kind of like business output, so to speak. And I think that it's effective to think of agents as the same thing, but just kind of the new, upgraded, cooler technology, rebranded automation in that sense. But also not to say that Power Automates are obsolete now. I'm not saying that at all. But right, agents get inputs in, whether that's a conversation message that somebody's having, and we'll get into autonomous agents, I'm sure, as a part of this conversation. But there's an input, it executes some level of code and actions, some of the cool large language models and the processing around it as well. But then there's ultimately just business outputs out of that, right? Inputs in, processes it, outputs out. And so obviously how it's producing its output is very different, and I'm sure we'll talk about it for the next hour, how it's different. But like I think like taking agents through that lens is really effective, because I think a lot of people are trying to build like one-stop shop agents that can do everything and just completely fix their poor data and their business. But I don't think that's going to set you up for success in any way. So demystify agents. They're just the new rebranded automations, if you want to think about it like that.
Awesome.
So one question. So you would talk about the M365 Con, and I think I had so many amazing conversations there. And one was Frank Felvey, who said, okay, an agent is something for everyone. Everyone can learn to build an agent. And when we talk about, for example, maturity ladders, the different kinds of agents, what do you think? What is your analogy to understand what is an agent, and what are the technical challenges here?
Yeah. So I'm gonna use another example that I had shared last month, because I do think it's really practical to help understand. And I had talked about, we all use calculators, right? They're fairly simple. They serve a very specific purpose when we need to add, divide, multiply, whatever numbers together. And it's really good at that one specific job, right? The arithmetic of getting those sort of things. But they don't have any memory. They don't have any context. They don't know when you're saying, hey, what's 4 plus 2? It doesn't know what that 4 is. It doesn't know what that 2 is. It doesn't know what that 6 is. And it also doesn't know that yesterday you added 3 plus 2 and what those numbers mean and all of that extra context. And so the cool thing about agents is agents do have all of that memory and the context, but I think it's important to still think of them as just the upgraded calculator in a sense, right? A thing that we use for a very specific job at a specific point in time. And so this part might not be groundbreaking, but the agents, they're more than chatbots, right? They're systems that can do things, and they can reason even on behalf of people. And the really cool part about M365 Copilot is that it's that calculator, but it's so well integrated into the places where people are already working, right? Like people are working in Outlook, people are working in Teams, people are working in the Office apps. and having that calculator, so to speak, right there at their fingertips that can help them do the job at that point in time, I think is really effective. And the cool part about Copilot Studio, which is what I enjoy learning so much about, is that it allows, I'll say, anyone to create agents, right? I definitely think there's some nuance and some trickiness and some expertise that's required to build agents in Copilot Studio. But much like Power Apps as a low-code way to build applications and different things, I think Copilot Studio currently does a good job of meeting that need as well. So, agents are only as valuable if they're connected to different things. And just like how a Power Automate flow, if it doesn't actually connect to anything, it's pointless, right? And so agents are the same. We need to be connecting them to logic, to documents, to people, to databases, and all of those different pieces. So I also think as we think about maybe some of the analogies or the use cases around agents, I think it's really easy to kind of think about conversational agents, right? Where there's agents where you're sending a message and then it does something and then comes back with a message, but also thinking about autonomous agents as well. And what I mean by that is maybe an agent that you're not directly chatting with. So there's some kind of event, some kind of trigger that wakes it up, and it's almost as if you just sent the message to it, but it's not you yourself, it's something in the system. So I don't know. I hope that maybe explains your question that you have there around how we can practically think about agents in maybe a more, maybe a more realistic way.
I mean, I love that answer already. You're a tech guy, right? I think we all tech guys or tech nerds in that case, and we are really, crazy about this one. But if you're talking to clients, obviously, we need to take a step back, because we need to identify, understand, what is your real use case where you see a value of that. So my question to you is, what's a framework? And I believe you have some kind of a framework you're also promoting, right? So which you can use and help to identify, do I need something in Copilot Studio, or do I need something, maybe in M365 Copilot, or maybe have to go one step ahead and go to the Pro Dev area and use Microsoft Foundry, an agent versus a regular automation, maybe only just a Copilot prompt, or maybe a little bit more. What's your secret or framework you are using to identify that kind of use case?
Yeah, I think, okay, this is a pretty loaded question. All right. So I think that one, yes, I definitely have put together some resources. Anybody listening, you can go to, or watching, you can go to citizendeveloper365.com/resources. I try to take the things I'm learning and boil them down into, one-page cheat sheets and share them for free on there. You can go and browse those and download them as you want. But yeah, I think about, and we can get more into the specific different types of platforms later, but I think about, okay, how do we find the right use cases for a calculator, right? If we continue with that example. And I think there's a couple of things we need to think about. And the first one being, if we really want to have a good return on our investment with the right use cases for AI, I want to introduce this topic of a growth engine. And I don't know if any of you guys have heard it before, but the first time I had heard of this, like those two words together, was at Ignite this last November. And I feel like it's really easy to practically think about how AI can be saving companies time and money, right? How we can use it to become more efficient. But I went to this session and it kind of flipped that script, and it was like, hey, those can show great returns on investments, but if we want to think about long-term returns in our business, we need to be thinking about how we can use AI to grow our business, or basically how do we use AI to make our company more money in that sense. And I don't know, that was just something that I hadn't really thought about in that way, and it was just boiled down so clearly for me as a part of that session. And you could probably, research a whole bunch of use cases or case studies on where people used AI to support sales team members or marketing efforts and those different things. So I'm not necessarily going to say read a bunch out in that example, but like if you're sitting here thinking, hey, what's the highest return on investment? like use cases for AI, I would challenge you to think about what are the ones that apply to growing our business. And again, not that ones around making our business more efficient are bad. There's been people with 40 to 80% returns on investments for those things. But if we think about, again, just reiterating what I'm saying, like if we think about long-term growth, like you can only get so much juice out of that lemon, I guess, is like a saying I guess I've said before. Like if you can only become so efficient at a thing, right? But if we're focusing on growing our business, you can, the ceiling essentially is endless in that sense. So I also like think about, if we compare agents to automation, like when should we use which? Because like I said, it's really just the rebranded form of automation. I think about like, is the input and the output of that use case expected to be the same each time? And so what I mean by that is if it's going to be, the exact same, the creation of a record that has all of these inputs and these fields because they're required and whatever, and every single time we want it to do this, that is exactly the same every time, I wouldn't say there's any point for an agent. Now I'd love to build you one, right? But in that instance, let's just lean on Power Automate and have a very deterministic, controllable process that does that. But say you need to generate a weekly report each week on sales team members, and you want to be able to chat back and forth and get deeper insights into that. Like that's not something where the output is expected to be the same each time. And so in that sense, we may want to think about and lean towards using an agent in that use case. So I don't know. That's how I guess I would kind of answer your question there, Bulent.
So if we're looking on the agent landscape, so I had a amazing talk with Dr. Nitin Paranyape regarding to an overview about Copilot. So we have in Copilot 3 agents, in M365 Copilot more agents. We have agents in Copilot Studio and in Azure AI Foundry. So that's for me as a consultant, it's confusing. So what do you say, like a walkthrough about this? What is a good way to handle this agent, landscape?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the different, I'll call them platforms, the different like agent platforms available within the Microsoft ecosystem. And you're right, there are different places where you can build different agents, and each platform has different strengths and weaknesses, pros and cons, limitations dependent on them. So sure, yeah, let's take a few minutes and maybe like outline the difference between all of these platforms in that sense. So the most basic one is M365 Copilot Chat, and this is free, not like Copilot on the web or like when you're on Edge and you have that pop-up pane. That's not what I'm talking about. But M365 Copilot Chat, this is free for all M365 users. So generally, if you have Teams, Outlook, and Office, you probably have this. And this does actually allow you to build simple agents in that sense. So with that, you can access chat histories, you can access the agent store, which is a bunch of kind of pre-built agents that are already out there. And like I said, you can create your own agents. Now, these are super simple. They're very kind of rudimentary in that place, but you can still modify the behavior, write instructions, define the purpose of your agents, add some knowledge sources to them nonetheless. The knowledge sources you can add are up to 4 just public websites. So you can't necessarily add internal documents or SharePoint sites or anything, can't connect it to anything, but you can generally create an agent that serves some sort of purpose. The next kind of like level from that is M365 Copilot, which not to be confused with M365 Copilot Chat. I love the naming of these two things, right? No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, so M365 Copilot it's the same page, it's the same experience as M365 Copilot Chat, but you do get access to a few more features that I think make a big difference. The first one is you get access to like work mode, versus web mode, which is really just being able to use your agent to chat against like Microsoft Graph and all the internal information around emails, Teams chats, everything else inside of there that it's connected to. You also get some cool collaboration features called like Copilot pages and notebooks. With that, and like I said, these are basically just ways that you can kind of consolidate all of your thoughts, your research, or collaborate with other team members. That's all kind of built on top of some generative AI. But like I said, you get everything that's in M365 Copilot Chat. You can still build agents, and it's very similarly the same experience, but now you get some expanded knowledge sources. So now you can upload documents. You get more than 4. I want to say it might be 20. I could be wrong though, so don't fact check me on that. But you can add SharePoint sites. You can add documents uploaded in SharePoint. You can add files, I believe, from your local computer to that agent, and share that agent to other people or teams in your organization. And so, like when it comes to agents, I feel like that's really the place where that platform is built to empower any business user to build an agent that helps them get their job done faster or help them enjoy their job a little bit more, because it's pretty simple. Like it's super intuitive. There's not a whole lot you can screw up or break. There's no connection references or all these other pieces. There's no solutions and all these different things. There's no topics, variables, nothing like that you get when you get into Copilot Studio. So like this is really the place where it's, hey, let's turn this on and just empower people at our organization to go be innovative, creative, and naturally I find that naturally people like doing their jobs faster, right? They like getting their stuff done faster so they can maybe spend less time at work or less time doing monotonous things. And so a lot of times this platform can lend itself to just naturally people doing that. The next stage is Copilot Studio. So this is getting more into the low code, moderate expertise realm, and why I try to spend so much time sharing what I'm learning online about it. Because while Microsoft, I love Copilot Studio, but while Microsoft talks about how easy it is to build custom agents and deploy them to anywhere and have it connect to all these MCP tools and define your topics and add adaptive cards, like while that's all great, most business users are going to be way over their head when it comes to that sort of thing. And so in Copilot Studio, you can build fully custom agents that have all sorts of tools, like the ability to update or create data, read or draft and even send emails. You can have it read and generate documents, all sorts of different things. The tool set that you get access to in Copilot Studio is infinitely larger than the tool set in M365 Copilot. So that is, I think, where it really comes into play as far as, hey, what is it that we're looking to do? Are we looking just for a general chatting assistant on maybe HR policy documents that we can share with our sales team members that seems to always forget about our HR policies, or like whatever that may be? That use case is M365 Copilot. But like if you're wanting to build an agent that connects to data, that connects to third-party services, or that you publish to a channel that's outside of Teams and M365 Copilot, then you need to build that agent in Copilot Studio. And so what I mean by that, I guess let me elaborate specifically on that last point. So, right, agents built in M365 Copilot can only be used or chatted with in M365 Copilot. Where agents built in Copilot Studio, you have the ability, these things called channels, you have the ability to publish your agent to a host of different channels. I actually have it pulled out. Let me see how many like roughly there are right now. There's like 20 different channels in there right now, and I'm sure channels are going to continue to expand as they, build relationships with other third-party services and everything. But like, if you can build an agent and publish it to Teams in M365, but you could publish it to like WhatsApp, you could publish it to your public-facing website, you could publish it to Twilio, you could publish it to Slack, you could publish it to all these different channels. And so if you're in a scenario where you want to build an agent that people interact with it outside of M365 Copilot, then you need to build that in Copilot Studio. Hopefully that makes sense. One piece as far as like the cost consideration. So M365 Copilot is baked into subscriptions. And then the Copilot Studio, in order to create Copilot Studio agents, you need a specific license. To interact with an agent built in Copilot Studio. So let's say one of you guys build an agent in Copilot Studio and publish it to a channel that I then chat to it. I don't need an extra license to chat to that agent, but you needed the license to create it in Copilot Studio. And then how that works from a cost perspective is just a consumption basis. The licensing always shifts and changes and different things, but that's generally how Copilot Studio licensing works. And I've been talking for I don't know how long now, but let's talk about Foundry too. All right, because real quick. All right, so there is Foundry. This is like the pro code older brother to all of these. I will not lie to you and act like I consider myself a Foundry expert at all. I do not. As much as I love the tech, I'm not a pro code person. But this ultimately gives you like the maximum customizability. You get access to more models, up to like 11,000 different models currently. It integrates super easily to all the different Azure services and more. And it's essentially baked into Azure pricing. So it's unrelated to kind of the subscription base. It's more like the pay-as-you-go sort of licensing over there. So those are the agent platforms.
Well, we've been talking for a little bit. Let's build something live, Griffin. Like walk us through creating a simple but useful agent. So what are we making?
Yeah. Okay. So let's build. I use the example of like an HR assistant. So let's build like an HR buddy in Copilot Studio. So yeah, I can share my screen, right? Let's share.
Yes, you can. Mm-hmm.
All right. So here I am within Copilot Studio, and we're going to build like an HR buddy assistant. So essentially what this is going to do is this is going to talk and look at some of our policy information and help answer questions.
All right, Griffin, could you do like a Control Plus? So
yeah, I can.
See it?
I can absolutely zoom in here. Is that okay?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Good call, because I get that feedback all the time that I make stuff too small. So, okay, so yes, so let's say we're building an HR buddy that's gonna look at some predetermined policy information, kind of some FAQ stuff around PTO and all of those different things. So let's go ahead and build that. So like I said, here I am within Copilot Studio. All I've done is just hit create agent from blank. And you'll see this sort of screen. The first, obviously couple pieces that we need is we're going to need a name. Let's call ours an HR buddy. Oh, looks like I made a sample one. All right, we'll just call it V2. That's a terrible example, but that's okay. Okay, so we're going to create an HR buddy. Thankfully, I have a backup in case for whatever reason the demo is against me. I found as well, make sure you save after you type the name out. I find that for whatever reason it will clear it out sometimes. But then we have our description, and what the description is really just about telling the system or other people what this agent does. So this isn't like the instructions or determines how it behaves in any way. Yeah, it looks like it just cleared it out for some reason. But the description here is generally describing what this agent does and how it can help, because in the event that you connect this to other agents, it can understand what purpose this agent serves. And so we could have it say something, for the sake of time, I kind of have already typed some of these out. We're saying our company is this company called CD Widgets. And what this is going to do is this is going to be clear guidance on workplace expectations, onboarding steps, policies, and answers to common questions for employees in our company. Okay, cool. So now we have it provisioned. If you wanted to add a, let's see if it actually feels like working. I made a little HR buddy icon. Let's see. Let's see if it works just for funsies. Okay, cool. So we have our HR buddy. Again, the icon and the name and the description are going to show to people when they're in, say, like M365 Copilot, trying to find it. The next piece is your model. We're not necessarily going to worry about changing this or anything. This is the large language model, or like the brain behind the processing of how your agent works. These do have cost considerations. These do have performance considerations. These do have like time to produce a response considerations as well. So I recommend you do your research for your use case, but we're just fine with using the default. And then we have our instructions. And instructions are super, super important to your agent, because these are generally going to be defining how your agent should behave, how it should generally behave. Obviously, connecting it to tools and all those different things goes a long way, but the instructions, like I said, are generally how your agent should behave. And it would be exhausting to watch me try to type out a bunch of instructions. But if you click on edit, you basically get 8,000 characters you can put in here for instructions. And we can get into this more as a part of our conversation, but this is generally how I like to structure instructions. It's talking about the role, the objective it serves, some logic, how it should output its answers, and all sorts of different things. Like I said, I think we can definitely get more into this after this demo, but nonetheless, right, you want to add your instructions. That's kind of like the next piece. So your name, your icon, if you're fun like me, your description, and then your instructions. Then the next like fundamental piece of your agent is connecting it to knowledge sources. Knowledge, think of it as like the long-term memory of your agent's brain, so to speak. So I actually already have our company, and like most companies do, already have some documents that exist around our policies, our HR policies that have been pre-created. I can go ahead and add those files that already exist to my agent. So if you click add knowledge here, you can point it to public websites or items in SharePoint or SharePoint folders. And I've noticed this this little tag has popped up here, powered by Work IQ. That's like super new. It's popped up recently. But in our example, I have these just on my local computer, right? Like I've like downloaded these files and I want to upload them. You can just hit select and browse. And then here are the three. So here are the three files. Again, I was just selecting them in my file explorer. We have an onboarding checklist, we have an employee handbook, and then we have an employee FAQ document. I can click add to agent. And what this is going to do is this is going to start processing these documents, reading through the information that's on them, and kind of give our agent the ability to see and refer to the content inside of these to help craft its responses to people's questions. One really important thing that I think is really important is if you click on these, or like I said, you can go, or like I just did, you can go to the knowledge tab. I think it's really important to come in here and update the descriptions of your knowledge sources. So for example, when you first upload them, it will add just saying, hey, this searches information contained in the name of the document. I don't think that's really practical. Just like the description of our agent, we're telling the system when to use this agent. We want to update this description to tell the agent when to use this knowledge source. So this knowledge source, we could say provides information about general questions employees may have. Right, and so this is kind of just a list of 30 questions that generally people ask and those answers. But going through your knowledge sources, providing some level of description like that, because again, this is going to tell the agent when should it search through this document, right? And you could do something like that for all of these. I'm not necessarily going to for the sake of time. I've also noticed, I feel like this processing used to only take a few seconds. I feel like as of recently, I found it taking up to like 5 to 10 minutes. Your agent, if you go to start testing your agent while these are still processing, it will not read any information from that. So if like you just added a knowledge source and then you open up the test pane and start typing and ask about that knowledge source, it might be like, hey, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? Because you unfortunately can't, it won't read the information in here until they're done processing. But anyways, as we continue to build out this agent, we have our knowledge set up. One thing I want to call out here is this web search. So it looks like this is disabled by default, but if you want your agent to be able to search public websites in combination with the knowledge sources you've added, then you want to enable this. I'm guessing in most scenarios, you're going to want this disabled, right? You only want your agent searching the selected or uploaded knowledge sources that you want. So that, I would say at this point, our agent is built. It's very simple. We don't have any topics. We don't have any other tools, but simply a place for people to go and ask their questions around these documents should work no problem. Ironically, as a part of the demo, looks like these are still processing, but thankfully I have my backup. Let's see if it wants to finish here. Otherwise, we can hop over to the one I had already made. Yeah, so let's go to our other one here. This is exactly the same. I haven't necessarily provided. Oh yeah, there it is. Exact same description, instructions. I've just added the knowledge sources here as they're in a SharePoint folder, so I've just added them through that. But nonetheless, like it's the exact same agent. Let's go ahead and test it. I could say I'm new to CD widgets. What do I need to do before my first day? So this is something that in our knowledge source is, some of the onboarding pieces, and it now has access to read that information. Okay, so it's going to look at that document, and I can see here this is showing the citation as to where it got that. And so it's saying, hey, I got this information from the official new hire onboarding checklist, which is one of the documents in that SharePoint folder, and outline just the content inside of that. We can see here as well, it's has the full kind of reference linked out here. I can click into this and go directly to that as I wanted. Let's ask another question just to continue test. We could say, how much PTO will I have? And again, it's going to go back, use that knowledge source, searching through the knowledge sources as it just showed there, and find that information. We can see here this one is now using the employee FAQ document to get that information. And just one more for good measure. We can say, where is the closest office to me? Now, if say there were a bunch of different offices, it might come back and say, okay, well, where do you live, right? It doesn't have any idea what I'm talking about, but I've only set it up so we only have 3 offices. So it just went ahead and surfaced that information saying, hey, here are the 3 offices kind of available for CD widgets and those sort of things. So that being said, agents tested, let's say it's ready to go and be shared to the people in our company. You're going to want to then publish your agent. And this can take a couple minutes, so I'm not going to do it for the sake of time. But once you publish your agent, then you can add channels to your agent. We kind of introduced this topic earlier, but underneath channels, which again is one of these tabs up here, you can see all the different places where you want to push your agent to live. Like this is where people can interact with your agent. In our scenario, this is just going to be for employees and internal people, so we can deploy it to the Teams channel. And now, one note is deploying to the Teams channel as set up in my tenant has to go through admin approval. I think that's the default. So if you're publishing agents to Teams, admins are going to have to approve those before they kind of show up for yourself or for other people. But nonetheless, you can add this channel here, determine the availability options as which team members and which users can access this sort of thing, and then it goes to that admin approval there. So at this point, agent built in Copilot Studio to kind of help support HR people from having to maybe answer the same monotonous questions over and over. It can offload that to, an agent to where people in the organization can refer to that to ask those sort of questions.
So I have one question to the quality of responses. It's because my first experience, because I'm a SharePoint guy, and one short hint, so we will have a show with Steve Corey soon regarding to the M365 apps part, but no, this one part here. And one part is, so I tried it with SharePoint as a data source, and I tried SharePoint lists, not documents, and I got for the first time 10 items back and for the second time 15. And today I heard the MCP for SharePoint is in public preview. I think it's right. So this is one data source problem I found by myself. So what do you think? What are other good data sources and bad data sources for Copilot Studio?
That's a good question. I think there's a whole spectrum as far as the different ways to connect to data sources, right? There's ways to add them as knowledge sources. There are ways to connect to them through agent flows, ways to connect them through tools. I guess to your question around like how can we elevate the quality of responses or like keeping our agent from going off script, I think the core of that is your instructions, right? So defining what the purpose of your agent is, how it should talk, are there things your agent should avoid talking about? Your instructions, right, are how you can determine how your agent should generally behave. And in your instructions, you can also tag specific knowledge sources or specific tools as well to say, hey, if you are asked to do this, use this tool or use this knowledge source. And outlining all of those things in the instructions, I think, goes a long way. And also think about this concept called like retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. Didn't feel like I was super familiar with this, but essentially what this is when you send your prompt, like when you chat to Copilot, this RAG, what it does is it goes and finds applicable knowledge sources and adds them to your prompt before it actually begins processing that information. And so like the quality, I don't even know if I remember your original question, but like the quality of the sources and your prompt and your instructions are going to have, I think, the greatest impact on the reliability of the output from a generative AI agent.
You know why you don't remember? You know why you don't remember that question? Because he just put in some kind of advertisement. Visit our next show and so on. And I think I was like,
I'm so sorry.
You shouldn't have a banner like advertisement, you know?
I'm so sorry.
Well, he asked 3 questions at once, so.
So
every time when I'm working, you know. Okay.
So because regarding to the response, I think this is a really important part for Copilot Studio. If you want to get a good response, I think Dataverse is really good as a data source or knowledge source, and all the apps who have an MCP server or something like that, or other integration. So that's what I found out by myself. So, but so for me, a missing point is SharePoint. So if this is integrated, I think this is a hooray. But it's still amazing what is possible at the moment with Copilot Studio.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when it comes to maybe really advanced use cases or, particularly nuanced stuff, like that is also why there is the Code Foundry platform for that. I definitely think Copilot Studio can achieve a lot of really cool things. Like, I'm not saying that it can't or trying to dog on it, But I think when it comes to, easily connecting to Dataverse or, some other third-party structured data, it does a really good job of doing that. And the MCP tools that are coming out is some really cool technology for how it can look and reason over that sort of information. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Awesome. So you just have answered more or less my question, why we're just referring, to prompt and so on, because that was already very good. But let me just rephrase that. How many clients you're working with and seeing they're writing bad prompts?
Okay, so I think that, people like to call this concept like prompt engineering. I think that makes it sound really fancy.
That is
for
one
what
of
it
the
is,
craziest job descriptions ever.
Yeah.
Has to do with prompt engineering,
Professional prompt engineer.
Yeah.
I think about like Microsoft gives this framework that I think is pretty good around, and this is where a lot of like the end user training comes in, because people aren't going to want to use it if it feels like it's not good. But I think what makes a good prompt is you give it context. So that's just generally explaining maybe who you are and where you like what where you come from, as in like the organization you work in, like just all of the color around what it is you want it to do is like the context. I then think you need to really specifically outline the goal, and that's essentially, what do you want Copilot or your agent to do? I want you to send an email. I want you to create an Excel sheet. I want you to change the theme of my PowerPoint slide presentation. Like, your goal. I think it's really important you include some kind of like source or sources. So that is saying, hey, I want you to look in these places to help come up with your answer. So instead of giving it the whole world to search through and find some level of response, I think if you have the ability to help guide it in that way to what sources it should look at, is really effective. And then I'm losing my train of thought. I'm trying to remember if it's example or explanation. Expectations, that's the word it is. Any other expectations that you have around maybe how it should produce its output? Like, should it give you a paragraph of text? Should it give you bullet points? Should it give you a PowerPoint presentation? Should it give you a downloadable PDF? Should it give you a table you can copy and paste into Excel? Like, all the expectations you have around how its output should maybe look or sound, I think is also important to include in there. And I also, I was doing this, I didn't realize I was, but there's this other way of like prompting this technique, and I'm blanking on the name of it. I can look it up while you guys ask your next question. But where you actually provide like example outputs in your prompt as well. So if you're like writing a prompt, or even just creating agent instructions, being like, hey, I want you to respond like this, and copy and paste that, that response in there. And so it's going to, not that it's going to use like the content of that, but it's going to look at the structure and maybe the tone and the things that, okay, this is what you like. How can I produce something very similar, like, but just for this new, whatever your new prompt may be about. So that's, I guess, how I think about approaching prompting. I think a really easy thing to say is like an easy script is just like, I am a blank trying to blank, right? Like, that gives you kind of the persona as far as who is Copilot helping, in any of the context. Maybe I am a blank at a blank type of company that does blank. I need your help doing blank. Like that gives you, I feel like, everything that you kind of need as far as an effective prompt, as opposed to just saying like, I don't know, what's an example? As opposed to just saying something like, hey, if my instructions for this agent were, you are the HR department agent for CD widgets, like, that really wouldn't have helped it in any way, as opposed to instead I outlined, hey, here's your role, here's your primary tasks, here's your core objectives, here's how you should output your responses, here's how you should handle errors and ambiguity and those different things. So I just think like, I mean, you could definitely need to have quality over quantity, but like if you're struggling to have quality, just find a way to add more words. Like, just make longer prompts, because you're inevitably going to give it more context to help it have a better response.
Okay. Let's see. I was just wondering, should we move on to the next session, or
Yes.
should we continue?
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's
I think we should.
let's talk about practical applications. What are some real agents you've deployed that you have made a measurable impact?
Yeah. Okay, while you were asking that, I was looking at, it's called few shot prompting. And this is providing examples of your output in your prompt. And the only reason I know that is because that was part of the AB 731 certification, the AI transformation leader. I just took it yesterday. Thank goodness I got a passing score. But that was part of the prep for that. So I was like, that was on the forefront of my mind. So, okay. Use cases. Like I think about a couple that at least maybe I've worked on or that I think are practical. And again, if you're trying to brainstorm, think about that growth engine we talked about earlier. Now, these don't necessarily specifically apply to that, but they could to help jog your thoughts around it. But like one that was a cool recent use case that I came across was like a weekly Excel report that a company was already getting. And this Excel report talked about kind of the opportunities won over the last week and kind of the sales team member performance. And so that's kind of the content that was in this Excel document that they got. And what they wanted was to use an agent to look at that and basically create a report on that was more readable for like the sales team leaders and things to see, hey, what are some strengths from our sales team members? Who should we celebrate for big wins? Why did customers say yes to certain deals or to this specific opportunity? What learning lessons could we take from opportunities that were lost this last week? What sales team members could we help better coach, and what actionable feedback could we give them? So like that was one that I think was really cool and ties into that like growth engine piece as well. Like, we talked about the FAQ one. I think that's a really easy way to free up people, whether that's sales team people, customer service people, HR people, IT help people. I had built an agent. This was way back when Copilot Studio was so new. So it was a great opportunity to learn and be frustrated as to why it wasn't working, if you know what I'm saying. But we ended up getting it working, and what it was the customer wanted an agent on their website for like website visitors to help answer questions around like their return policies and warranties. And they had all this information in documents already. So it was very similar, honestly, a very similar setup with some more nuance with topics and things than what we were just showing with our HR buddy, where we uploaded those files to this agent. We could deploy that agent. The channel was to a public website. You add that code to, your website, and the chat window pops up on the side, and you can chat and interact with this Copilot Studio agent that was, I wouldn't say trained, but used like defining those specific knowledge sources. I also think about there was a customer service help desk agent where this was internal to help customer service reps knowledge search faster. So somebody's on the phone, they just called in, they're having this issue. I'm a customer service rep and I can ask Copilot, or explain the issue that they're having, and it search all of the relevant knowledge sources in the organization and try to provide some quick feedback that I could maybe, recite back to the person on the phone in that way. And then I also, Buellin, it's so funny you mentioned this at the beginning, like the Power Talks podcast. I've been toying around with building an agent to help me with the prep for these. So, for example, I have, guests come and they fill out a form, and okay, how could I use an agent to potentially process that information, maybe generate an intro and 20 questions to where then I can pick out the questions that I want to talk in our conversation and review it and, send it eventually. So maybe those are some cool examples of just ways that I've either used or built agents or am currently using or building agents.
Awesome. To be honest, I could talk with you, and I think everyone could talk with you for hours on this topic. I feel your passion, but time is mostly not only my enemy, also your enemy as well. We have some questions, from the audience. That means you're doing such an amazing job, and I'm pretty sure that people would love to see some answers too. So we're ready and jumping now to the first question I just have here, from Ukamaka. Hopefully, I spell your name correctly. Otherwise, you're allowed to kill me and lynch me. Everything is allowed. How do we control every business team building their own agent to avoid sprawl? I think this is a very, very good question.
Yeah, dude. Okay, good question. Good question. So, something that is really cool about building agents inside the Microsoft ecosystem, so any of those platforms, is it abides by the security infrastructure Microsoft already has in place. And so what I mean by that is, say I work in finance, all right? And I somehow, through some way, someone shares a link or shares the agent with me, or I logged in on somebody else's computer or whatever, and I'm chatting with an HR agent, all right? And say that agent is connected to a SharePoint site or a database that contains like super confidential employee information, right? That if I wasn't talking to that agent, I wouldn't necessarily have access to as somebody who works in the finance department. Well, Copilot and agents, assuming the connections and everything are set up correctly, interact to those connections through that person's credentials. Now, again, there's a huge asterisk to make sure that it is set up correctly, because you can bypass this with custom agents built in Copilot Studio. But nonetheless, like if I'm talking to an agent in M365 and I'm trying to access information that I don't already have access to from, whether that's Power Platform Admin Center, M365 Admin Center, it's not going to surface that information. So I get that doesn't necessarily address like agent sprawl, but I do think a lot of the concerns are around, okay, if we just turn on agents and connect it to all this stuff, like, does it just make all of our departments and groups and teams and security roles obsolete? The answer is no. Again, assuming it's set up correctly. And for M365 Copilot agents, yes, they are. As far as like agent sprawl, I think is really interesting around, like understanding what are all the agents that are in the system. So something that was really cool that was announced at Ignite and is still very new and most people haven't been able to, really get their hands on it and in there, is Agent 365. And so the ability to really see all of the agents in the system, what they're talking to, and even like govern them as well, to be able to turn off agents that may be like threatening, or this agent's like really hallucinating and not providing responses that we want. Like having a lot of that control for M365 and Copilot Studio agents in Agent 365, which is in M365 Admin Center. That was like a lot of different namings, things that I just said there, but hopefully that helps maybe answer and address those concerns in that question.
And you can also limit like who can publish, which group, which users.
Correct.
Who should not be publishing. So there are some guardrails Microsoft have already put up.
Yeah, and to that point, especially with Copilot Studio ones, to make and publish Copilot Studio agents, you need a Copilot Studio user license. So just giving people M365 Copilot, the $30 a month subscription, I think is what it is now, like that doesn't instantly give people the ability to create low-code agents that talk and connect to all of these different things. That allows them just to build agents in M365 Copilot, which has the much more limited set of knowledge sources and things you can connect your agent to.
Awesome. When you're mentioning licensing, usually I'm in a call with people about licensing, and they already have their maquettes or just knives and hammer on me down just to kill me with that kind of question. But no one is asking that. You're so cool. Usually we can finally talk about cool stuff, tech stuff in that case. Anyhow, Heike has a very good question. Heike just asked, once you just create your agent, you check your agent in your HR example. Is it running once and for years? Or what if you want to replace documents in your SharePoint folder or Word documents? Is there anything you need to do afterwards? Or let me just say that in my words. I translate that from Heike. Do you trust your agent?
Yeah. So, okay, to to the like life cycle part of the conversation around like how do we make sure an agent stays up to date and those different things, something that is really cool is if you connect your agent to a SharePoint folder as a knowledge source, and then you can modify those documents, add them, take them away, update them in that SharePoint folder. Your agent is going to use the information in that SharePoint folder at the time of like retrieval and getting that information. So connecting to SharePoint documents or SharePoint folders, I think is a better approach than like our example where we just uploaded the raw documents from our computer, because now I need to maintain those documents. Now, in the event that those documents change or that I used it in that way, I can re-upload a new version of that and then just republish my agent. So again, that publish button in the very top right, you can republish your agent, and then those updates will be pushed to all of the channels that your agent is accessible. So there's kind of that give and take, I guess, from that sense. And there may be scenarios where you want it to always be live and up to date in SharePoint, or you don't, and you want it to kind of be predetermined by hard-coded uploaded documents. So that's kind of a cool nuance, I guess, when it comes to things like that.
Awesome. Next question. I know we're going a little bit now over time, but hopefully you still are with us and stay here because I think it's great. So the next question I'm seeing here is from Daniel in that case. Lucas, I will come to you. When I create and configure an agent on the Copilot homepage, why can't I add it to a SharePoint page using the agent link in web part?
Say that again?
When I create and configure an agent on the Copilot homepage, why can't I add it to a SharePoint page using the agent link web part?
The agent link web part? I guess I'm not too sure. I know maybe I'm not understanding the question, but in order to add SharePoint files and knowledge sources to your M365 agents, you need an M365 Copilot license. So you can create agents in M365 on that Copilot screen that cannot have SharePoint knowledge sources. They can't have SharePoint knowledge sources if you just have the M365 Copilot Chat, that first kind of platform. I don't necessarily know if that was the question though. I think it's more so maybe around like sharing that agent. Like how do we then get people to maybe access my agent that's connected to SharePoint? If that's maybe the question. Once you create agents in M365 Copilot, you can share them to different teams or groups or specific employees as well, and it's going to show up on their Copilot page in that top left area underneath agents as well.
I believe the question goes more into the direction, so if I may to answer, it goes into the direction of that when you're creating an agent in SharePoint, which you can just do directly in SharePoint, if you can modify them in Copilot Studio as well. So there is some kind of options how you can just do this and configure from there, but it's more a declarative agent than in that case. So it is possible. It is possible.
Yeah.
Good. The next question, this will be an interesting one. Once again, I apologize in advance for your name if I'm pronouncing it not correctly, but Sin Shark Olang, I practiced 10 minutes inside of me. So a team of HR, so he gave us an example, are having a handful of good agents, but I'm scared this agent will get lost as many agents are being deployed. Is it good to have them as child agents in Copilot Studio under one main agent, like a parent HR buddy orchestration agent? So I believe the question is more about, so if you deploy a lot of these agents, that you just lose control about this one. And that's why I think the question goes more into the direction, is it a good usage to have a main agent and you just orchestrate then the child agents in there? What's your experience with that?
Yeah. I don't know how much experience this person has with like Power Automate Flow, but I kind of take the same like solution architecture approach to having parent and child Power Automate flows to having parent-child agents as well. And so, if we think back to like our calculator example, if we're building agents that serve a very specific purpose, like what this agent does is this writes an update to Dataverse. Like that's what it does. It gets this sort of input and it does that. Then I think having some kind of parent agent that can call on that child one is useful. Because if we start to make the parent agent too big, the performance and I think the cost consideration as well, like are pretty severely impacted. Like I was having a conversation with somebody and they were wanting to basically connect just general Copilot to their ERP system to be able to chat over it. And like I kind of disagreed with them doing that. I was like, hey, let's just create like an ERP agent. Like, let's not wrap this thing up in Copilot. Let's not, give it too many things to think about or consider. More so like, hey, let's just create an ERP agent that serves the very specific purpose of talking to the system and returning some information back. So to your point, I think that could be a great approach to having some kind of general HR buddy. And then maybe underneath that, depending on how complex or how segmented these things this parent HR buddy does, say you have one agent that's just really specialized in reading that FAQ document. And then you have another agent that's really specialized in the onboarding process. And then you have another agent that's really connected to, the PTO and policies. And then you have another that's connected to the expense policies or whatever, like expense reporting. Like then you can connect the one parent that tells it, hey, oh, they just asked about expense reporting. Let's go use this agent that already works really well and has a very defined specific purpose. So unfortunately, there's not a hard and fast answer to it. I definitely think it takes it's an art and a science to do that, but hopefully that maybe helps clarify how you could approach things.
It definitely does. Thank you very much, Griffin. In that case, my 2 cents on that, use that multi-agents concept a lot. Make only your agent as smart as possible or as smart as minimum, don't make it super over smart. Just don't put a lot of knowledge into it, because if you give more options to the hand, it will maybe not give you the right information right at the time. So only connect to a specific use case and use that agent-to-agent orchestration construct. That's what I can give you as a best practice. Awesome. Here's the next question from Amin. By the way, the guy who just answered the questions just said, I get the name wrong, rate correctly. That means I will sleep very well in that case and not with a bad feeling. That's really good. So, his question is, can an agent using MCP for Dataverse, for example, fully replace existing APA contracts? For example, retrieving and filtering data, what are the limitations? And I believe the question goes in that, if I'm using MCP in that case, so shall I still go then, or can I just abandon all the connectors in that case? Or should I go fully with MCP? So what is the advantage of MCPs, in contrary to connectors?
All right, we're going to be here for another hour. All right, you ready? You ready?
Yeah, of course. Of course.
So I will also lie, love the technology. It would be wrong for me to say I'm an MCP expert as well. All right, I do not know all the nuances of the technology, but I generally feel like I understand when MCP should be used and maybe when it shouldn't. So part of this conversation that we haven't necessarily gotten into is the idea of something being a deterministic process and an indeterministic process. And so what I specifically mean by that is when we're talking about Power Automate flow, it is very deterministic. It gets a certain input. It runs this exact process of options. If it's missing an input or the syntax is wrong, it errors, nothing happens, it breaks, whatever. But ultimately there's an output. Like it's every single time this thing happens, right? It follows this exact structure. Well, AI is obviously very naturally indeterministic, right? It's looking at word relationships and producing outputs that even aren't necessarily fact or truth-based. And so the reason MCP is proving to be a great technology in its ability to look at data or information and get really powerful insights out of it. But at this point in time, it's relatively more indeterministic. So it's generally less controllable than, say, a Power Automate flow. And so if I'm building an agent where I want to, say, update a very specific record 100% of the time, no hallucination, never go off path, whatever, I would say we probably shouldn't be using MCP in that use case. Let's just build an agent flow and make sure our agent gathers the inputs that we need, and then it just calls the agent flow that runs and boop, 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 fills in all that information. Now, say I want to just connect it to like my opportunity data on opportunities and just be able to like ask it questions about, hey, who should I talk to today? Which opportunities are, high priority? Which customers have I not talked to in a while and really should keep those opportunities warm? Like that sort of information that may not be creating, updating, or deleting, but more so like the reasoning talking to, they're not so mission critical. I think MCP in those examples are like great technology for doing something like that.
For sure. And also here my 2 cents. MCP is great for the AI age, connectors were made where we didn't talk about generative AI. And that's why if you're using the connectors, you're not getting every time the best result out of that. So the MCP has a huge advantage to getting you better providing answers by your agent or by the technology behind the large language model, and et cetera, et cetera. And I absolutely agree with you. Agent flows, Power Automate flows, these are proven technologies, reliable. You can use them. MCP is still new in that case and needs to prove that it's worse. It's still, in some scenarios, limited, to be very honest. You are more flexible with agent flows in that case. All right. I think we do have more or less all questions answered, except one, also from Sinsha Golang. Do these agents build their own capabilities as we build and deploy them?
Say that one more time.
I think that goes more to that Agent 65 direction, I guess.
I see. Build their own capabilities. My initial thought is no. Your agent only is going to be able to use the tools, the connections, the knowledge sources that you give it access to. If you, in our HR buddy example, if somebody just creates another HR document, my agent isn't going to say, ooh, this might be helpful. Let me add this in here to my knowledge sources. Like it doesn't do that. It's not like the, and I think about, I'm giving a talk in a little bit. We're talking about trusting AI in the future, and it's like people definitely still think about like the sci-fi movies that came out before I was born, and like those different things. Like that's not true. It's not just gonna like take over the world and take over your company and just instantly access all of the data and give everybody the ability to see it all. It doesn't work like that. Thankfully, Microsoft, I think, is doing their due diligence and making sure that all of the AI pieces they're adding to the Microsoft ecosystem align with their responsible AI principles. So it doesn't have the ability to just add capabilities to your agents. It's only going to do exactly what you outline as far as tools and topics and knowledge sources.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Very awesome. I think we are over time, and one last question that came from Lucas, but I already have answered that. A little bit. Lucas just asked, is voice in Copilot available? In M365, it's finally available, so you can use that feature. In Copilot Studio, ask me next year. I hope it will come somewhen, but one of the most requested features, but unfortunately, it's still not there. I have some wild series, but we should end more or less. So before we do this, Isabel, Marcel, any last words from your sides?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway is to start small. Don't try to boil the ocean, but one agent that solved one real problem and then expand from there.
So I want to thank you, Griffin. This was an amazing show. And Bülent, Isabel, amazing, like every show. And our next guest here is in March, the amazing Damien Bird. And Griffin, I think you have a great announcement at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Thank you guys so much for letting me be here and hang out with you all. It truly has been a blast just sharing, like I said, the things I'm actively learning, right? And if anybody tells you they know everything about Copilot, they might be lying. All right. So
Agreed.
we're all learning this stuff. All right. We're all trying to learn it. But with that being said, I've teamed up with some really cool subject matter experts. Myself, Donna Sarkar, Chris Huntingford, Andrew Welch. And we've put together this cool program called the Agentic Strategy Blueprint Program that kicks off next week. So we're getting close to when people can register, but I'll be sure to include a link to sign up. And really what that is, okay, how do we help businesses build an AI strategy, understand the 4 levels of agent management, connect Copilot and AI tools to measurable business value, how we actually architect those things and should approach them from a high level, and then ultimately drive end user adoption. So like, if you are interested in becoming a frontier firm, as Microsoft loves to call it, or scale from 10 to 10,000 agents, you're going to want to be in this room. There's lots of cool content that's going to be in there, and the conversation led by myself and those other partners leading the program. So love to see you there. And yeah, thank you guys so much again for letting me hop on and share everything I could.
Thank you very much, Griffin. That was last question. Come on.
Last
I
you
need
will
to
get.
go. My wife is just asking.
No problem, man. So same here. So you will get the music video now.
Awesome.
This was not on the.
Coffee rings on a cluttered desk, half-written notes, unchecked requests, inbox climbing like a wall, tiny tasks that take it all. Meeting stacked from 9 to 5, status slides we revise, manual updates every week, polishing words that no one reads, copy threads, summarize, rewrite points to sound concise. We were told that tech would change the way we spend our days, but most of it just rearranged the pressure and the pace. What if it could be different? What if we kept it simple? Remember what you're here for. Draft the recap from the call, flag the risks before they fall, turn rough notes into a plan, track dependencies across the span. No big transformation pitch, no endless roadmap stitched, just one solution tight and clear, solving something real right here. Prototype and test it fast, keep the scope within your grasp, like the tool handle, repeat strain, give your head some space again. Small changes stack like bricks, momentum built from fixes. Build simple agents that help you breathe, not giant systems you'll never need. Start with one small workflow, fix the grows.